One day during an afternoon, my sister and I were in front of the house as we usually played there. At that moment, my grandmother passed by our house and gave my sister and me a bag with several stuffed animals inside. We were, of course, delighted because our grandmother had always been fascinated by all kinds of toys. She lived alone, and in her house she had some beds filled with them. We always enjoyed seeing them because they were so varied, colorful, and beautiful. Every time she came with new ones, we always wondered where she had gotten them this time. But among all those stuffed animals she gave us in that bag, there was one in particular. Honestly, it was very ugly. It had a smile that, now that I think about it, was quite macabre. It wore very dark-toned clothes and had somewhat long and very messy hair. But still I liked it. It caught my attention a lot and I didn't know why. And no, I wasn't the only one because my parents often picked it up to look at it and comment on how curious it was. And so that day went by between household chores, our homework, playing with my sister, and everything that makes up a normal day. Night came and we were about to go to sleep. I wanted to place that doll on a piece of furniture we had between my sister's bed and mine, as we shared a room. But, of course, if during the day my sister didn't even want to look at it, she was even less likely to allow me to have it near her while we slept. I asked her anyway, but she insisted on keeping it as far away as possible because she was genuinely afraid of it, something I didn't understand at the time. So, I took it and stood in the room looking around for the perfect spot to place it. Then I found a good place. In front of our beds there was a wardrobe and on top of it we had several stuffed animals. So, I took the doll and started arranging it. I left it in a position where it seemed to be hugging a tape recorder we also had on top of the wardrobe, with its feet hanging. To me it looked perfect. I lay down and after a little while of dozing without fully falling asleep, my sister woke me up. She asked if she could lie down with me because she hadn't been able to sleep, and I assumed it was out of fear of that doll. I told her it was fine and just moved over to make space for her. She stayed on the edge of the bed and I was on the side next to the wall. But after that, I struggled a lot to fall back asleep. When I closed my eyes, I couldn't help but picture the face of that doll in my mind. I couldn't get that smile out of my head. And really, I don't understand why. I hadn't felt fear when thinking about that doll before, and as I mentioned, it filled me with intrigue and curiosity. Yes, but I hadn't felt fear. I was thinking about it for a while, looking for some answer when, apparently, I suddenly fell asleep. I remember that night I dreamed I was lying in my bed and my mom was carrying that doll. They were looking at me and she took its little hands and pretended it was touching my foot, as if it were pulling me. I don't know if it was the dream or something else, but I woke up because I truly felt like someone was touching my foot. I sat leaning against the wall trying to calm myself. I kept telling myself it was just a dream, that nothing was happening, but I didn't dare look toward the wardrobe. I really didn't have the courage. I could only glance at it out of the corner of my eye, as my gaze was fixed on the foot of the bed. And, as I mentioned, I couldn't make out the figure of that doll from my peripheral vision. I didn't want to turn my head, but I knew it wasn't where I had left it. I began to feel as if very slowly the sheet at the foot of the bed was being pulled. I swear, at this point and with everything I was feeling, it was hard to believe that something like this was happening to me. But then I felt a strong grip on my foot, and I jerked away abruptly to free myself. "I know it's you, Mom. Please come out," I shouted several times. Honestly, I was more than scared by this point and just hoped it was really my mom. While I was shouting, I heard, in the darkness of the room, the shoe boxes we had on the floor at the foot of the bed and near the wardrobe were moving. My sister, of course, woke up with all this movement and noise and she quickly started screaming. She almost jumped out of bed to run out of the room, but I stopped her. While holding her arm, I told her I didn't know what was down there. Just then, my mom entered the room, turned on the light, and at that moment my sister and I started crying. Between sobs, we frantically told our mom what had happened to us, and the three of us turned to look at the wardrobe. Every single stuffed animal we had on top of that piece of furniture was scattered all over the floor. All except that doll, which was looking at us from above exactly as we had left it. Mom quickly took us out of the room and closed the door. We all lay together in her bed, waiting for our dad, who was working the night shift at the time and would be home soon. Sure enough, after a few minutes of us going to my parents' room, he came home from work. My mom immediately told him everything that had happened, and without hesitation or questioning us, my dad went to the room, took the doll, and threw it in a trash bin we had outside the house. He told us to sleep in their room with my mom, and he would sleep in our room that night. This truly calmed us down a lot, and we were able to sleep better for the rest of the night. The next morning, as soon as I heard movement at my grandmother's house, I rushed over to her, as it was obvious I was more than upset about what she had given us and what it had put us through. And by this point, fortunately, the garbage truck had already come and taken it away. So, after that anger with my grandmother, I began to feel calm about the matter. At least during the day. But everything was the same at night. We felt an intense fear, and it was impossible for my sister and me to sleep. We slept on the floor next to our parents' bed because we really didn't want to be in that room. A few days passed, and on one occasion, a neighbor who was very close to my mom heard about all this in a conversation they had. She told her that what we had was pure fright or something like that, and that we just needed a good cleansing which she could do for us at no cost. So, for an entire week we went to her house every day. She used a type of stone that I had never seen before and didn't know the name of, but it was white and transparent. She would pass it over our bodies while saying a prayer, and afterward she would make a small bonfire and burn it there. I also remember that these stones would change shape when they came into contact with the fire. They didn't melt, they just changed shape. And after some time, that stone, along with the remnants of the small bonfire, was emptied into a glass of holy water. This glass was placed under the bed of the person who had been cleansed. And the next day the stone was gone. I think it disintegrated or something because all that remained was the holy water. And as I mentioned, the stone would take on another form when it came into contact with fire, but the neighbor's daughter who performed the cleansings was always there, nosily observing the whole process. She would tell us, as I never wanted to see the shape my stones had taken, that they had formed into that doll. One afternoon, I overheard the adults talking about what had formed on one occasion. They said this stone had taken the shape of a bed, and on top of it, someone who they assumed was me. In front of the bed there was a large figure with some kind of hood, but they said it was a man. That smile. And to this day I can't forget a single detail. Of course, I didn't see it for a long time because of the impression it left on me, and I was genuinely afraid it would be under my bed at night. But the next day, just like with the other cleansings, it disappeared at dawn, and from then on we started sleeping much better in our room. Mom soon asked my grandmother where she had gotten that doll. My grandmother told her that an uncle had given it to her. He lived in Denver, Colorado, and one day he found it at a garage sale. Just like all of us, it immediately caught his attention, and he couldn't resist the opportunity.